part of a party. And so I'm here with two wonderful guests, Cléo
Carastro,
Carastro.
yes.
I'm a coward when it comes to actually saying it out loud. And and
Manon Brouillet.
oh wow, no, I couldn't have said it like that. That's beautiful. Thank you. Who are two scholars from France who are studying or researching right now at the Center for Hellenic Studies, which is a program of an installation of Harvard University here in Washington, D.C. And we're going to be talking with them about their work with griots, singers, diviners, and many other wonderful folks they have been talking to me about for the last hour or so. I have lots of good stories. They have many more good stories to tell you about their work in Burkina Faso in Africa. I really enjoyed meeting Cleo and Manon a couple of weeks ago when I was a part of the Snowden Roundtable at the Center for Hellenic Studies. The Snowden Roundtable was a roundtable that discusses blacks in the black classicists, of whom I am one, as you all know. And when I heard that they actually had met real living griots, and I use the word griots, but you use the word singers and chanteurs and other names for them, which we'll hear more about in a moment. We are at 94.3 FM, streaming worldwide at tacomaradio.org. I do want to remind you that the African Film Festival starts on March 9th through the 19th in American Film Institute in Silver Spring. One of the movies they'll be showing will be Sundiata, an African epic, which I teach in the fall at Howard University. And we're not really connected, but you remind me of each other, if you will, because of the African Film Festival coming and the joy I had in meeting you at the Center for Hellenic Studies. A special thanks to my colleague, Greg Naj, who introduced me to you and who also is the director of the Center for Hellenic Studies. You can find Epic City on Facebook under Epic City or under carolivia.heron, on Twitter at carolivia, on the internet at carolivia.com. If you go to mixcloud.com in about 24 or 48 hours, you'll find this show there permanently, we hope, or for the next 2 weeks you may find it on tacomaradio.org. We will not have a YouTube version of this. Well, my engineer is out of town, but we may work on that after he gets back, because I don't work on that when he's my helper on that sort of thing. All right, and epic moment. I usually have an epic moment, something that's happened in the last week that reminds me of epic, but you are the epic moment for this week. The epic moment is finding a griot, or somebody who has found a griot, or someone who's made it the business of their lives to find griots of Africa and to bring the stories of them, about them, the anthropology, if you will, of them to the rest of us. And I thank you so much. I'd like, oh yes, I usually give my definition. An epic is a long narrative describing the origin, nature, or destiny of a people, depicting a hero or heroic ideal, and incorporating the cultural worldview. There are many other definitions of epic. I use that one because it includes epics from all the continents. If I said it's dactylic hexameters, it won't work for all the continents. Okay, and I'd like to start just by talking with you, Cleo, if you will. As I started an hour or so ago, we were having a little coffee together. How you came to this field? You're a classicist, right? Are you trained as a classicist? By the way, I should mention that Cleo is actually Italian.
Yes,
As well as French.
I was born in Sicily.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So I had a classical training at my university in Palermo, and then when I went to Paris in France, I learned more and more about anthropology, and I worked with two great Africanists there. Michel Cartry and Jolie Durand. My idea was to become an anthropologist. And first an anthropologist of ancient Greece, and then of West African societies. So I was very lucky to meet these people, researchers, working on Burkina Faso rituals, societies, And my idea was to have a larger knowledge about anthropology of religion, not only working on texts, but also working with people.
Yes, and ritual, you told me as a part of that.
Yeah.
So much so. I should tell you that there's a joke that friends of mine say about me that if you get a big crowd of people, scholars and various types and all kinds of subjects, that within 10 minutes I'll be standing next to the anthropologist in the room. That somehow there is always a link between me and whoever is the anthropologist, and somehow they're always around when I ask them, what is your field? You're so interesting. He says, oh, I'm an anthropologist. So there is I have a special connection with you. One of the things that excites me about my conversation with you is you take the rituals that are in, say, the classics in Homer, for example. I think about in the Iliad going off to sacrifice the hecatomb to make peace with Apollo and Apollo's priest and all that sort of thing, as if it were a real thing, which I guess it is. And by taking that as real, you find the realness in the rituals of Africa.
Yes, I could also say that I understood Homer in Burkina Faso.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
tell me now. You can't just leave that there. Tell me what that
well,
means.
I was a PhD student working on my subject of research, and when I went to Burkina Faso for the first time, I was hosted in the village of Bara. During the night, we heard some voices crying. There was someone who died.
Oh,
And so we went to very close to the house of the person died, and we heard some songs, and these songs were performed by a griot, and this griot was creating a ritual area, a ritual space, in order to open the way for the died person and join the other people in the other world. So then at this special moment when the griot was performing this special song called Zongo, which is not easy to understand, because people say that the griot uses very ancient words, so archaic words.
Sounds like Homer to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so excited because also in the Iliad and the Odyssey you have some moments where the Aoidos, the singer, performs songs for the dead.
Yes. Now you got me thinking. I can't stop to think about it. I've got to keep on talking. One of the most exciting moments to me in the Iliad is when Achilles is so mad and he goes off and sings a song of heroes
Yeah.
by the sea. And I want to know, well, what song? Because the first song is the Iliad. What could he be singing? And of course, Iliad can't be the first song. There had to be a song prior to that. So what song does he sing? What songs do the singers sing before the songs that we know existed? And so you bring my mind. But singing songs for the dead. I'm sorry. I'm trying to.
When Hector's died,
Oh,
At the
yes.
very
end.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
there are some songs performed by lamentations by the women,
Oh, yes. And of course, Patroclus. Yes.
Yeah.
They are. Yes.
and even for Achilles' funerals, there are the muses coming from the sea.
Yes, and they're so frightened.
Yeah.
And the people are running away. For those, I can tell my audience, Achilles' mother is a sea goddess, and when he's dead, she rises up from the sea with her nymphs beside her,
Yeah.
Thetis, with all her fellow goddesses, and the sound of her rising up out of the sea is so frightening that everybody is running away from the funeral. They're scared. And then, don't worry. I think it's Nestor, somebody like that says, don't worry, it's okay. It's just his mother. His mother crying over him and that sort of thing. So, are you telling me that happened your first night Pretty soon after you got there, or
Pretty soon, yes, pretty soon. So it was a moment where ritual was entering my life. I mean, I was invited to perform a sacrifice with other people because in order to do research during the fieldwork, it was necessary to be involved, ritually speaking, in these matters. So. Of course, I participated to some rituals, but this time, life and death were reclaiming their part, their
yes.
due.
I think this is one of the most important things you shared with me today, because many of the wonderful anthropologists I've known have been working on a different model in which you're not allowed to be a participant in what you're observing. And I've seen this happen, especially when I was in Mexico among the Mixteca indigenos, that by not being a part of it, they're missing out on what the source of it is. And I felt so sorry for the anthropologists then, because I was in several situations where there'd be an anthropologist standing around taking notes while people did things.
Yeah.
And then the anthropologist would leave, and everybody in the room would break out laughing at what they had said to them. And then they'd go on and be themselves in a different kind of way. And I often wish that the anthropologist could be there after the laugh, just to see what was really going on behind those scenes. I would like to, if I may, play one of the songs about the funeral. Is that way you can hear Manon and Cléo have brought several of the songs. I should mention also that what made me particularly excited about having them here is that many of the songs they have heard, and I don't know if we recorded them or not, cannot be shared because it would be a violation of the people who created the songs. And that made me give much more respect for what you're doing, that you're not sharing anything without the permission of the singers. That's wonderful. So let me go ahead and play this funeral song, and bear with me as I okay, funeral female chorus.
No se cree.
Manon is going to help us tell us what we just heard.
Yeah, so this song was registered during it's a funeral song, which was sung by a female singer and her chorus, and everybody was participating in the ritual at that moment. There were not only the song, but people were dancing and clapping hands. Have you probably heard? And so that was one part of the ritual to accompany the dead person to the
next world.
The next world.
What do you?
Yeah.
Is there a better word for that? Do you think is next world work or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. It works. And so there are different songs at different moments. So as you mentioned, this one we were able not only to record but to diffuse them. It was not it was not the one that was the most sacred song, and so it was sung by one singer. We just told you before.
Yes.
So it was one female singer that was very important in her village, and so she was running the rituals, especially when the dead person was a woman, which was not the case here. So it means that most of the song was sung by male singers, and there was some part by her. And if it were a female, she would have sung most of the parts.
I see.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit more about. She's the one with the amazing story
absolutely.
of her history. Introduce yourself now. I've sort of introduced you through your
Yeah.
commentary, but now
So-
tell us your connection with Cléo.
Well, what I'm a classicist too, at the beginning of my formation, say, and I was interested in oral poetry, and I worked mostly on Homer, and I was very curious about ritual in ancient Greece and the ritual dimension of the epics, because I had the idea when I'm beginning to work on this that it had something like you have to take into account seriously, the appeal to the muse at the beginning of the Iliad and the Odyssey. And so I talked with Cléo, and I was like, I really would like to understand what ritual is, And she told me, well, maybe you have to come to Burkina Faso with me among the Nuna people, and you can study oral poetry there and work with singers, and that's what I've done.
And you are born in France. You are
Yes,
French.
absolutely,
Okay. And I'm trying to. Where should I go? I'd like to know more about the Nuna people.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that, or which I don't
Yeah.
know? Perhaps I don't know who should.
So the Nuna people, so they live in the south of Burkina Faso. They are part of the broader group of Gurunzi, and they are neighbors of the Lodaga that had been studied by Jack Goody, and who are very well documented. On the contrary, the Nuna people were not very much documented before Cléo went there in the 90s, and so it's a pastoral society. And they live mostly in villages from agriculture. And they have a very rich ritual life. They are very well known in the region for their diviners and for their healers too, traditional healers.
Diviners, healers.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something, the two of you, earlier about the epic. The epic is the griots on one side are singers. I'm sorry, the difference between the hearers and seers.
Yeah. So
Can you go on? Do you know? Remember what we were discussing
yeah.
earlier?
maybe-
That some of the diviners hear,
Yeah.
and others
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
others see. I'm sorry, I forgot the exact.
everything is
configuration.
linked to the the beings, the invisible beings
Geniuses.
living.
Genius.
Geniuses. Okay,
yeah,
beings. Is that what you're saying?
beings,
Okay.
sorry.
Mhm.
Beings living in the bush.
Ah.
So all the knowledge the diviners have about the invisible world comes from them, from these invisible beings called Kikiri. Kikiri are living like in a human society. So they have marriage, they have places to share drinks, and of course they are not visible to all the humans except from the diviners, because the diviners can see the invisible, can see the Kikiri. At the same time, a griot can hear them and can sing with them when they have to perform some special rituals, when, for instance, they have to accompany the dead to the other world, or when they have to understand how to help to initiate new diviners.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's something you hadn't mentioned.
Yeah.
They do initiation of. That would make sense. You would have to get new ones because they don't all live forever, I suppose.
Yeah, there is a lot.
Or maybe they
and
do. Maybe they do.
Yeah, so it's true that the singers have a very important role in the ritual life of the Nuna, because they accompany not only the diviners but also they accompany the masks when the masks are coming. You know, there are different masks for different animals and big fest where they are dancing, and the singer is always here to accompany them, and the masks represent, or we can even say that they embody the powers, the divine powers of the Nuna.
Yes. You mentioned that sometimes they record genealogies as well.
Yeah.
And is that a particular group of the? I've used the word griots. I don't think that's a big enough word, but we'll use that word for now, or
Yeah.
should I use another word?
Well,
Singers.
actually, they use it. So
They
the
do.
word
Okay.
griot is usually used for Malian poets, Malian singer who sing epics, as you know. But usually, so they use either singer or griot for the same person. So, and it's just one category of singer who can sing different kind of songs. And there are genealogies, yes. Genealogies, like, for example, of the chief of the village, but also, as we mentioned, during fieldwork or during harvesting, the singer can come to the field to stimulate the workers, to help them to do what they have to do. And eventually he will just pick one worker and cheer him up and begin to sing his genealogy. And also he will mention his fiancée and saying that she's very pretty.
She's looking at you.
And she's looking at you, so you have to work hard. And one of the knowledge of the singer is that he has to be able to sing the genealogy of anyone who comes. So even if he doesn't know you, he will be able to sing and to say the deeds of your ancestors.
Wow. And you're reminding me of a moment I had when I was teaching in Central Africa. I was in Congo, Brazzaville, and I had a class there. I don't know, maybe 20, 25 students teaching, of all things. They wanted a class on American feminism. So I had all these texts I was sharing with them. And on the last day, we had a little party. And one of the students came up to me and asked how she could get in contact with me, say, afterwards. So I took out one of my cards, my business cards, and on it, rather than just hand her a card, I wanted to write something special. So I wrote a translation of my name, Carol as a song, and Olivia as Olive Branch Peace.
Oh, wow.
So I wrote Song of Peace on the card and handed it to her. Well, lo and behold, she thought I was giving her a name and that I was telling her her genealogy, essentially. And when the other students saw it, they all lined up for cards. And I had to come up with a different name for each one of the 25 students. And when I talk about invocation to the muse, it was like, oh, Lord, please help me come up with something different for each person. But amazingly enough, you look into the face, just take a moment and quiet yourself and stop worrying. And you look into the face of a person, and the name would come. And I wrote these. I wish I had them now, the list, but these 25 names, and I would hand each one a card. The first one didn't know I'd given her my own name, and I guess it reminds me of this. These are not the same people, of course, but there was a similar. I had a feeling that all of a sudden I turned from a regular, normal professor into an elder, and that I was naming the children and giving them their names to go out into the world. It was very powerful.
Your story reminds me that when we were talking with CB, who was a singer in the Vara village, Manon asked, but how do you manage when you compose a new song? Can you improve it? And his answer was, well, when I start singing, I connected with the, which is the name of the sky. Okay, so we translate by God, but it's something larger than a concept of divinity. And then this song starts and ends very perfectly, in a perfect way. So there is nothing to improve.
How amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, what a conversation. I have to remind you that you're listening to Epic City on WOWDLP 94.3 FM, and I have my wonderful guests whose names I'm going to try not to butcher. Cléo Carastro,
Yes, perfect.
okay, and Manon Brouillet, okay,
Absolutely.
who are scholars from France who are now doing their research at the Center for Hellenic Studies here in Washington, D.C., and outreach, if you will, of Harvard University. And I thank you again for being here, Center for Hellenic Studies. Thank you. I'm glad to have. I never thought I'd find somebody who actually helped record or save or share. I don't know what words to use because it feels like I don't want the stories to be lost. I don't need to hear them all. If they're sacred, keep them where they need to be in order to keep them sacred. But I'm glad that there's an interconnection between all of our worlds
Yeah.
and the world that they're in.
And the Nuna people, they were very happy to give us information and to explain us, and they were happy with the idea that afterwards, back in France, we would spreading, and explaining and making people hear to their songs and to their culture more broadly. So that they would be very happy to know that we are here.
Well, we can just send them all.
Yeah, we will.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to play another one of the songs. I'm not sure which one. It says Griot's Silly Jazz Coupe.
Yeah.
Is that the one? Will that work here?
Yeah. So
Okay, I'm going to do that one and then come back momentarily.
Jamani. Ya namna mwani.
And now, Manon, you'll help us to understand that?
yeah, so it's still a funeral song, same funeral as the first one, and then the sentence that is repeated and repeated by the singer is, the translation can be, it doesn't mean that the diviner is not powerful. implying that what must happen happens. So if the man is dead, it's not because the diviner did not help me, did not help him, or did not prevent him from dying, but it was his destiny. So just saying that the diviner is powerful, but he cannot do anything.
Yes.
He cannot. Yeah.
Now that's Homeric enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and I usually take time now to remind you of some of my favorite shows here on WOWD LP. First of all, let me wish a belated happy birthday to Cardo of DMV Underground. I saw his birthday celebration last night on the DMV Underground, and I hope you will listen to that next Monday night going into Tuesday morning, 11 p.m. to 1 in the morning. And that's, as you know, I think of that as my sister show. I don't know if you probably don't know, my guests, that I actually taught the first course in hip-hop in the United States at Harvard University. And the DMV Underground is like my other half in many ways. Also, on Wednesdays, Borderlines in the morning. I hope you will listen to and Jolly Papa from 1 to 3 with my African music that I love. And one of the joys I've had when I got my DNA done and discovered that I'm like 59% Nigerian. So now I can claim Nigerian heritage and feel like I I don't know if you understand. For African Americans, we don't usually know any idea where our sources are in terms of biology. So that it was a joy for me to discover this, and now instead of feeling like I'm on the outside looking in, I can fuss at people and be a part of it. You know, you can't be a part until you can actually say, no, I disagree. Let's do it this way or that way. So M.A. And Michael, I congratulate you on Jolly Papa's show. I love. Well, that's followed by Afropop Worldwide. And in the evening, the DC Roots of Music with Wayne, who serenades me as I'm on my way back home from teaching during the day. And on Friday mornings, the ballads in the morning. I love the connection of the words with the music for ballads in the morning. And on Saturdays, I love this music with Bobby Hill. Hope you will do that. I'm going to start adding. I've been listening to some other shows lately, and I've got to add to my repertoire of those I talked to you about. I enjoyed some new things. I'm very proud to be on Tuesdays. I feel like with Steve Hoffman in the early morning and followed by Marika, that it's really cool to be a Tuesday show. And I'm followed by our young teenagers, Sugar and Spice, who are in their senior year and may not be with us after too many more weeks as they get ready for graduation from high school. And we have the Blues Hall of Fame coming after Sugar and Spice, which follows my show. Anyway, WOWD LP, Tacoma Park, 94.3 FM. Okay, now back to my wonderful guests from the Center for Hellenic Studies. And maybe now is the time to tell us the amazing story of one of your singers that you said you asked a simple question. Did something happen before or after her child was born? Can you tell us the full story behind this? Take it. They didn't hear what I heard, so please take it back.
So we were working with a female singer. So it was the one who was leading the chorus on the first recording that we heard. So her name is Larba. Which means Wednesday, because she was born on a Wednesday, and so she had an amazing life, and she many incidents in her life. She was poisoned, probably by her husband, and she was ill. So eventually, she went to a diviner. That's what you do, when you are Nuna and you have so many problems, you go to consult to know how to deal with it. And well, he told him something, but I will tell you how we discovered that she had such an amazing life. So she was explaining us that she had founded a group of music that's precisely the group that we heard, which was called Silly Jazz.
Oh,
So,
that's
yeah.
where the name comes from. Okay.
Absolutely. So Silly was the name of the village where she came from, and she was living in another village. So we wanted to know, the chronology of her life. So we asked, did you created the group after or before the birth of your last child, who was a diviner with whom we were working too. Especially Cléo was working with him. And so she began to explain, and she was talking in Nuni, and we had a translator, because even if we can grab, some words, we weren't able to understand everything. And at that point, our translator he stops and he says, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what a story." And he says, so, she had two lives, and so what she was talking about before was her first life, and then she came back as an ancestor with the second life, and that is how she became a singer, because in her first life she was a singer, and then when she had so many problems and she went to the diviner explained that her ancestor, so the person that she was before,
Yes.
wanted her to take the same activity, so the singing. So that is how she became a singer.
Yeah, it seems so magical.
Yeah.
I go through so many days feeling like there's nothing beyond what we have here.
Yeah, and for hours she was telling us her life, mixing her previous life and her actual life. When she was just telling us her relationship with the divine powers and everything, sometimes it was in the past and sometimes it was in her actual life.
Yes, and I know you use the word actual, and I want my mind wants to put that word actual in both of them.
Yeah. No, well, maybe it's because of French. Actual means in her present life. That was
thank
current
you.
life.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, and I have to say that remind both you and tell you and remind my audience that this is not an interview but a conversation.
Yeah.
So I when you remind me of things, I have to tell you some things that reminds me of, and what that reminds me of. I remember when I was a little girl, my parents bought me this record player, played 45s, which nobody even knows what they are anymore, right? The little records with the big hole in the middle.
Yeah.
And there are lots of love songs. It was a big stack. It came with like 100 records for like $1. and a lot of them were love songs. And the person would sing, "I'll love you till the day I die," over and over again, many, many times, all these times. And I remember, even as a 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old, I thought, well, that's not very long. That love you the day I die. Won't you love me longer than that? That's not any time at all. And it makes you wonder, at what point do you get the sense that life doesn't end with death? Because nobody told me that life. I don't think. I mean, because I went to church with my mother, and I was also on the search of becoming of identifying and embracing the Jewish part of my own life. And yet I don't remember anybody sort of dinging in my head, life goes beyond the grave. And yet it seemed like a natural response. And I remember sort of asking my parents about it. I said, why is it? I thought he was trying to say he loved her, but he doesn't love her very much, does he? Because he's only going to love her till the day he dies. And that's not very long. Anyway, so it reminds me of this song. I'm glad I asked you about the actual.
Yeah.
So that's
because
a translation.
there are two
That's
actual.
it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't want to say that her first life was not actual, not at all. So that.
Yeah. Wow. On and on we go. I have my list of. I would like to ask Cléo. You were telling me you seem to be more interested in the rituals, which cannot be shared as much.
Yes.
And I want to know the difference between the subtle differences between the rituals and the songs, or the stories, if you will, and the songs. And also, okay, you get off an airplane, or I assume from France, you didn't walk to Burkina Faso, and you take some kind of a ride, and you arrive at a village. How in the world do you find a translator? I feel like I want the story of how it happened.
Yeah.
If you can help me with that.
Of course. When I arrived at the capital of Burkina Faso, Ouagadougou. I was just in contact with one person doing research in social
Somebody
sciences.
was already there.
Yeah, already there. So a Burkinabe. And he told me, well, we have to meet some people and to take time. So it was very funny because at the beginning I was making my agenda, so taking appointments 1 hour after 1 hour. But of course, it didn't work at all. But so it takes time to live in other times. It's very interesting to experience how time can change when you change places, when you travel, and when you enter new ways of interacting with people. So I think at the end of my second week in Burkina Faso, I went to the village. I was very happy, and I met Kirase, who was an old man, very renowned healer, traditional healer, using plants, powders, and of course very well connected with the bush beings, the Kikiri, who explained me the Nuna world. It was a very fascinating person who died 3 years ago. He was extremely generous, so even though he was quite old, he accepted to accompany me with my motorcycle. So
You had a motorcycle?
Yeah,
Oh,
so
my.
it was so funny. And
I would love to put a photograph that would be.
next time. So it was a great experience to understand how this connection with Kirase, the old healer, was very well intertwined with divine powers which were invisible. So in order to work together, I had to be accepted by these divine powers.
Yes.
These divine powers were connected with the bush. So the same word, for instance, for these divine powers is Tio, which means plant, tree, and a divine power. So the first thing was to understand this connection between things that we tend to separate in our, let's say, Western civilization. So the question was to enter this world and not to use our categories of belief. It is not a question of belief. When you say that someone is believing something, is it a way to create a separation between you and the other person? No. In this case, I had to learn to see in a different way. So the first thing to do was to make a sacrifice with my old guide, Kirase, who asked the divine powers to accept me in the bush with him, and then to meet other people in order to meet other divine powers more renowned, more powerful in other villages connected, of course, with the first one. And so I think that after the first month, I was quite well known by the people of the family of this old man. And what was so exciting and at the same time amazing is that all the daily life we shared was intense, not only for work but from the human side. So we were laughing a lot, and people during the day were very eager to answer my questions. But then during the evening, I had to answer their questions. So it was a they were so interested by our way of living, experiencing life, what we call the afterlife. So I was so tired that
So you had to answer all of them. Yeah. They could all gang up and ask you 1,000 questions, and you had to answer them.
They stopped only when I was closing my eyes.
Yeah. Now, again, you're taking me back to my teaching in Central Africa when sometimes I was trying to explain feminism. As I told you, for some reason they had a request to the U.S. government to send a scholar to teach feminism, American feminism, and I was trying to. I was trying to share with my class that many of the tasks that they think only men can do, women can do as well. And I, well, remember, So I said, well, tell me something, from your wherever you're living, that only a man can do. So only a man can guard the compound at night. And I'm thinking, well, come on, you can put a woman there and she can guard the compound and you can give her a gun and have her march up and down or whatever. And they looked at me with a strange look. And I said, well, who do you have? Well, tell me about these guards you have that guard the compound. I said, well, they're the oldest people in the community. And they just walk up and down, and people respect them, and nobody would hurt one of these men. And I, in my foolishness, said something like, "Oh, for heaven's sakes, anybody can walk up and knock down an old man." And they looked at me with this horror. You mean you would knock down an old man in your culture, in your country? And I said to myself, "You're better than I am. So let me just shut up and go back." But it was a strange kind of not understanding how, and it's not. We all have weird things in our worldviews, I think.
Yeah.
And what it did for me is maybe what things that we take for granted in our own worldviews that are not self-evident. And they really shook me up, as it were, as I saw things. I remember like standing there trying to explain certain kind of rhythms in poetry after having listened to some of this music that was so different from even from African American music, the African music. And I, in the middle of my sentence, I sort of, like you talk about erasing the board and said, that's wrong, and coming up with something new. But it sounds, I feel like I'm going to go back and listen to your last speech, because you said something, it takes time to get used to a different time.
Yes.
I think you said something like that. It's quite beautiful. Thank you, for that. Let me, I want to get in all of those songs you brought since they're so rare. So I'm going to go to the next one. I think this is a praise of field work that we will listen to next.
On vient tous les trois de France pour faire des recherches sur les coutumes des Nounans.
Okay, I'm told that I've saved the wrong. I'm going to go to the fourth one here, and then get the right one in here. Okay, and bear with me.
On va plus s'asseoir.
Il faut boire.
Hein?
Faut boire.
Au point. La pensée.
Non, l'eau vaillant.
On dit que le monde n'est pas bon.
L'eau vaillant, faut boire nettoyer l'eau vaillant. L'eau vaillant, faut boire nettoyer l'eau vaillant. Anatia de boire wayo materi. Atigatia de boire wayo mobili. Anu bia ba faut boire nettoyer l'eau vaillant.
Si vous dites que le monde n'est pas bon, c'est que tu n'as pas une pensée ou une vision. Mais si tu as une vision, le monde est très intéressant. Quand tu as une vision ou une pensée, tu penses, pendant ton sommeil, toi aussi tu vois que, s'il plaît à Dieu, je payerai une moto. Un jour, je payerai, je te dis que tu vas aussi avoir une voiture, et même un avion privé, une jet privée. Donc, le monde est bon. Ce qui fait que le monde n'est pas bon, c'est quand quelqu'un n'a pas de pensée ou bien quelqu'un n'a pas une vision. Là, sans vision.
L'eau vaillant, faut boire nettoyer l'eau vaillant. L'eau vaillant, faut boire nettoyer l'eau vaillant. Arrêtez de boire wayo materi. Atigatia de boire wayo mobili. Anu bia ba faut boire nettoyer l'eau vaillant. Aïe.
Merci beaucoup. Merci pour ce bon pensée.
Tell us about that one.
Yeah, so this one is a proverb which is sung. So it one of the things the singer perform is the just sung proverbs. So this one is saying, and you've heard the voice of our translators here. He was translating during the performance. It was not. I mean, this singer CB, who was living in the same village as where we were, just performed for us. So we asked him to perform some proverbs in order to know more about it. And this one says, if you think that the world is bad, that the life is not good, it means that you have no thought, you have no vision. Because if you have vision, you know how interesting the world is, and you can have dreams.
Oh, sounds like that's hope for those of us that don't have much hope some of these times. Yes, and because I want to get everything in. I'm moving back and forth here. Let's see here. She danced. Tell us about who was the one who danced. Both of you danced?
Yeah, both of us. Yeah.
Well, tell us about the dance while I set up the next song.
Yeah,
No, you're pointing at each other. Come on, somebody's got to talk.
Yeah, entering the space where dancing was performed, it was a way of participating to the ritual life and to the daily life of Nuna people. So for us, it was very important to be there with our bodies and not only with our minds. We were not doing only research, we were trying to understand life in a different way. So movement is essential in this respect. Movement and performance.
And was there any, do you want to add to that? You
No,
said you
no.
danced with him as well. Is there any part of the dance that is restricted, or is that?
Oh no, it's just you. It's not a formal dance. It's just you're just following the rhythm, and we were like, trying to have the same kind of movement that they had, but it was not formalized gestures.
Okay, I was wondering when I mentioned to you earlier that my family a member of the Wampanoag Nation, and they have some dances that everybody can be a part of, but others that
Of course.
that are totally
Yeah,
restricted.
of course. Yeah, it's
That's
the
the case,
So you have that as well.
Yeah.
That's the case because when masks dance, of course, nobody else can enter this sacred space. And it's a very mystic moment because a dance performed by a mask is something which is very linked to the invisible world. So only the musicians and the griot can accompany the dancers, the masks.
And you mentioned also that the masks have their own genealogy in addition to the people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and the griot, of course, is required to recall the genealogy before the audience, and he must be able to sing and to perform all the genealogies of all the masks, even though a mask, for instance, has been forgotten for a period of time, and then every mask has his song. So it's very interesting, detailed also. So the performance is a sequence of new songs performed by the singer who is calling for a buffalo or a chicken or an eagle,
Yes.
and so on.
Yeah, and as I mentioned to you, in a very comparing great things to small, perhaps, but it does remind me of how in storytelling in my family, especially my Uncle Richard's storytelling, which is recorded in Nappy Hair and some other texts of mine, whenever he told stories at a gathering, and there was a stranger there, he had to incorporate the story of the stranger into somehow it was like he was in touch with something, was able to make up, even if it was making it up, who knows what it is, that somehow everybody has to be included in a certain kind of, not everybody, but there can't be any outsiders. I guess that's the point. That's everyone has to be incorporated in some kind of way. Let me see if I can play this other song. I hope I have the right one this time.
On vient tous les trois de France pour faire des recherches sur...
It won't come out. Oh, I'm so sorry. I've tried my best. I've tried several times, and it's not.
On
it's
vient
the
tous les
same.
trois de France pour faire des recherches
No.
sur.
It somehow, and the transferring of it
Yeah.
didn't. We lost
I
it
don't
in
know,
some way.
sorry.
I'm sorry, and we can't. It's not legal over that. What was it? Can you tell me anything about that song?
Well, it was we mentioned it, but it was a song by this singer Larba, and she was singing on our request. So it was not a performance. So we wanted to hear how was the harvesting cheer up, you know.
Oh yes,
So-
and I would love to hear that. So
I'm sorry. So so it was the song about the fiancé of the worker
Yeah,
and how
yeah.
the worker has to work hard.
yes, and it's a work song for people who are working willingly. These people harvesting their own
absolutely.
crops in their own world.
Yeah, it's their own field.
These are not
and-
workers being forced into.
Oh no, not at all. Usually, what they do is, they will gather like a group, a dozen of men and women, because men and women harvest together, and to the field of one people. And they will do all the work in 1 or 2 days. And the day after, they will go to another field who belongs to someone else and do it together as well. So that's how they do usually. And the people who don't have a great field, they just do it with the other, and then they have their share of the harvest,
Yeah.
even if it's not their field.
Oh really?
So they are it's their payment.
I see.
Yeah.
They take a portion of it in that.
And of course the singer has a portion too, has a payment.
Oh yeah,
because,
yes. Get his work in there in some kind of way.
Yeah.
Well, she danced the thing that's lingering in my mind is the call of the genius, and I'm wondering if either of you can elaborate on that, because it reminds me actually of 17th century epic Miltonic poetry. Milton, the genius of the wood or the genius of the land, or somehow that each part of the natural world, or maybe sometimes the not so natural world, has its own focus or thought or idea, and that we've lost that in some way, and we use the word genius in a completely different way. So I don't know. Can you elaborate on that in any way?
Yeah, of course. In our vision of the world, we create a separation between nature, supernatural powers, and culture. But it doesn't work like that everywhere, of course. Anthropologists explain how there are different ontologies, different visions of the world. So, in the case of Nuna people, there is an invisible world which exists, which cannot be seen, but which exists, of course. And there are special ways Griot and diviners can call these invisible powers, like using a calabash rattle, and so making rhythm, special sounds. They can invite these invisible powers to enter the ritual space they create for a consultation or for a special event like funeral, for instance. So the idea is to have this link between the world of human beings and the invisible world, in order to create new connections, in order to know better destiny of a person, in order to heal, because of course these invisible powers are not only good but also bad for human person, because sometimes they are just punishing a person who forgot a ritual, so they punish them with disease. So the idea is to call them back and ask for being forgiven, and at the same time it's a way of creating new good connections between these two words.
Oh, how beautiful. You speak so well, beautifully. I'm going to...
Plus s'asseoir.
Il faut boire.
Still not it?
Il faut boire.
We have heard this one.
Okay, we have 5 songs, and I still can't get the one that belongs here. I'm going to ask you to stay tuned to listen to Sugar and Spice and everything nice. And after that, Blues Hall of Fame. And we're going to close with that. Is there any final word before I put the final song on?
Happy to say hello to the Nuna people and ask for renewing our connections with the invisible world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, both of you, and I appreciate it. And I may have to find that song and play it next week so we can do that.
We'll
Okay.
do that. Yeah.
Okay. And